I'm going to talk about plastics. So, about a few weeks ago, not very many weeks ago, I was there in that place, and in Scotland, a remote beach, and so what I do on my holidays is I collect the rubbish on the beach, and that was what I found on that occasion. So even in a remote place in the UK, there's lots of plastic in the oceans, and in fact everywhere in the world, even in the most remote place in the whole world, they find plastic in the ocean on beaches. So this is a problem. I'm going to talk about plastics in general and why plastics are actually quite important to us. Plastic waste is the major problem, and I'll explain a little bit about that. To deal with the problem, to tackle it, we need actually to think of the big picture rather than just focusing on one little bit of it. And I'll give an example of that in particular. We'll look at what happens to plastics when we've finished with them, when they're turning into rubbish, and then I might give a few ideas about what we can do about the problem. So, thinking about what we use plastics for, most of our electronics has got lots of plastic in it, and we couldn't actually have what we have, watches, computers, without a lot of plastic. There is no other material that will do that job. So we need plastic for that. Brings the price down too. Automotive, other transport, lightweight, cheap, robust. That's what we need, and that's what plastic is delivering for us. Buildings. The way in which we make buildings waterproof, heat-proof, depends a lot on plastic now. And as we get older and fall to bits and need to have parts replaced, a lot of those are plastic. So, plastic, it's cheap, and that's important. Versatile, lightweight, particularly for something like transport, and durable, which, particularly for buildings, is important. So, plastic, really important for all of these applications. But, people worry about plastic. They worry because it's based on oil. Oil's not running out, but it is getting more difficult. Plastic waste, landfill sites, but it doesn't stay in the landfill sites. It comes out of those and gets into the oceans, and the wildlife suffers, and that's a big problem. So, 2017, David Attenborough, everybody's favourite grandfather figure, had this television series, Blue Planet, and it was just the right moment, and it had a huge impact. People were just ready to start thinking about plastic waste and maybe what we could do something about it. And the governments started getting interested as well. Environmentalists refer to the Blue Planet effect. A huge impact just at that moment. But then, just as things were starting to move along wonderfully well, COVID came along, and a lot of things went into reverse. And we had to use single-use plastics for hygienic reasons. And the waste management plants fell into financial trouble and everything got really difficult. So we're just starting to recover from that now, but it was a big setback. So things are happening, but more slowly than they might have done. William McDonough is one of the big figures in environment, and this perspective here about what we do with our rubbish. We can't actually throw rubbish away now because it ends up in somebody's back garden. So there is no away. We used to be able to throw things away. Things went away. Where is away now? It's here, someone's backyard. We inhabit a smaller and smaller planet. Away has become very close indeed. So we have to think about actually what we throw away or what we do with our rubbish. So, plastics. What do we use plastic for? The biggest thing that we use plastic for is packaging. The next biggest thing is buildings, so civil engineering stuff. I'm going to talk about packaging, not only because it's the biggest, but also because it's transient. What do we use packaging for? Food, for instance. It's active life, maybe a few days, weeks, months, but not more than that. It goes round the use cycle very fast. Compare that with buildings. So all that plastic that we've got in buildings, providing us with insulation, waterproofing, that should be staying there for at least 50 years. Doesn't matter so much. So packaging is what we're going to focus on. What's packaging? Well, what's it for? If you've got liquid, it's got to be in something. If you've got powders, they've got to be in something. Fragile foods, packaging is there to protect them. If they break, if the skins get damaged, you lose the product. So the packaging is doing a really important job in protecting them. Surface damage, impact when you drop them, handling, saves a lot of food waste. It does other things as well. Some packaging is really very, very clever and sophisticated. Smoked salmon from Scotland is arrived by post. It survives. Even the UK postal system, it survives that, mostly. And that packaging is a vacuum, and it will keep the product fresh for days, weeks perhaps if it's kept cold. Salads, we have to stop it from drying out, and it's got a protective atmosphere in that package. It's nothing sophisticated, it's just nitrogen, but it helps to protect it, and it means that when you squash the package, the stuff inside doesn't squash so badly too. So, two different sorts of packaging there. And then crisps. Crisps are, without packaging, you could leave them lying around for an hour or two, and then that's the end of them. But this packaging protects them so they have a shelf life of weeks, which is pretty amazing, really. And smelly cheeses, you keep the smells in, but actually that cheese is alive. And so it needs to be able to breathe, and so this very clever packaging lets the cheese breathe as well as protecting it. Protecting you from the smells. So there's a lot of quantitative information about what packaging does, and the main thing that I want to focus on is that it increases the shelf life, it stops a lot of food waste, and we can reduce food waste by 40% by using the right packaging. More in some cases. So really important. So, going to give an example. I'm going to talk about packaging for cheese and chicken. Okay? So, the metric that I'm going to use here is that we're interested in the carbon footprint of producing the food and its whole lifetime. And so that's measured in kilograms of CO2, but that's global warming, okay? So kilograms of CO2, global warming, is really important. This is the main thing that we should be focusing on. So, look at the production bit. We've got cheese and we've got chicken. Vegetarians do not like this slide. They are shocked that their cheese has a bigger carbon footprint than chicken. Well, I'm very sorry about that, but it can't be helped. This is cow cheese. It may be that goat cheese, sheep cheese isn't quite so bad, but cheese does have a big carbon footprint. Chicken, transient, short-lived, smaller carbon footprint. Sorry, there we go. Packaging. So the packaging for that, there's a very, very thin red line there, which is the carbon footprint of the packaging for a kilogram of both of those things. Manufacture, use, it's the production bit, making your cheese, making your chicken. That's the important bit. Disposal. We need to magnify by 1,000 before we can see anything at all to do with the carbon footprint of disposal. And actually, with plastic packaging, we get some energy back, so it's a bit beneficial what we do at the end of life. But just look at it. It's the production stage that's important. So, the bottom line here is food packaging. It does all those protective things for our food. It stops food wastage. If carbon footprint is what we're interested in, global warming, we need to be protecting the food, and we need to remember that the carbon footprint of the packaging is vanishingly small. So, there are other reasons for thinking about what we do with our packaging. But carbon footprint, remember the food production bit. Okay, what happens at the end of life when you throw away stuff, throw away your plastic packaging, is a historic chart with a recycling rate going up gently. It's gone up a little bit since then, but not as much as it should have done. And what happens to the stuff? So these blue lines, that's stuff which goes for export. The pale blue is stuff that is actually reprocessed in the UK. What happened round about then? China stopped taking our rubbish plastic. And what happens? Well, the export goes down a tiny bit. The UK recycling processing goes up a little bit. Needs to go up an awful lot more. But there's no dramatic change in the amount that's exported, and we worry about exports because we don't know where it's going. We know where it's supposed to go, but it actually goes to a lot of other places that it shouldn't do and may not be processed very well. So we really, really do need to be stopping all the exports. But what happens when China stops taking our plastic? Well, it goes somewhere else. And at the moment it's going to Turkey. So there's a lot more that needs to be done there. So here's a life cycle for any materials, but plastics in particular. We start off with our raw material, we make a polymer, we make a product, we use it, we throw it away, and any of these things can happen to it. Basically, it's good at the top and less good at the bottom, and with intermediate things in the middle. So we do recycle quite a lot, and nominally all of these things are counted as recycling of some sort. But the best is at the top. And if we recycle We can send back to making new polymer, or we can recycle and make new products from the plastic. This is the best way. We take post-use plastic, we sort it, we clean it, we shred it, we put it through this machine here. It comes out looking like sort of toothpaste, we cut it into bits, and this we can use for making new stuff, new products, the same as what we had before. And if we do that, we save a lot of carbon dioxide. We don't have to make as much new material. So this is what recycling should be all about. But do we do enough of it? No, we do not. We recycle sort of 14%, going up a bit. We make low-value products out of a lot of that. We lose some, and effectively, new for new, it's about 2%. That's catastrophically low. We need to be doing an awful lot better with that. Why don't we recycle more? Because it's difficult, it's expensive. If you think of that packaging, I said some of it was very sophisticated. That's really high quality material. It isn't rubbish. And so the plastics have to be as good as the excellent plastics which are produced from virgin products. So it's expensive, it's difficult. The real barrier is economics at the moment, for why we don't. There are technical challenges. It's difficult, and there's lots of research going on into increasing recycling. And so better processes, lots and lots of work. And the costs will go down as the processes improve. There are a few things that we can do now, straight away, to increase the amount of plastic that gets recycled. One very simple thing is this. So it used to be that if you bought fizzy water, fizzy drinks, they were in coloured bottles. Colouring is an impurity which you can't get out of the plastics. So if you've used green plastic here, that can only be used for low-grade applications after that. It's called downcycling. So the marketing people said, oh, people will only buy fizzy drinks in coloured bottles. It's not true. And we're now using clear plastic for most of those. And that means that the material can be recycled to high-grade applications, so much more recycling, because if it's high-grade you get money for it, so it's worth doing. So that's a very simple thing, which a lot of people are now doing. But we also know that biopolymers, biodegradable polymers, you buy your portion pot, comes in a biodegradable thing, so you can throw away the dirty pot and it's going to get turned into compost. Well, maybe, maybe not. That's the theory. And in some ways that makes a lot of sense. We don't have to wash the plastics, it's cheap to process. And so at the end of life, we're disposing of this plastic in the same way as the waste food. It's good in theory, but there are lots of buts with that. So when people say biodegradable, they think, oh, produced from plants, this is all green and wonderful. Well, actually that's not true. Most of the biodegradable polymers do come from fossil fuel sources. So bio-based doesn't mean biodegradable, and biodegradable doesn't mean bio-based. Very different things. If we do make bio-based polymers, there's a lot of fossil resources involved in that. There's the fuels, the fertilizers, there's all the irrigation, there's a lot of energy involved. And so actually it can be environmentally very damaging. So industrial scale agriculture is not nice. It's not like growing things in your backyard. Then there are technical things as well. It's actually very difficult to distinguish biodegradable polymers from some of the non-biodegradable mainstream polymers. And that causes problems in the sorting. And it means that a lot of waste streams, they won't take anything that looks like plastic because they can't analyse it properly. So biodegradable polymers that go into that plastic waste stream are causing problems. So anything that looks like plastic gets discarded. And we don't make very much. So bio-based polymers, it's about 1 to 2% of the polymer production. Nearly everything comes from fossil sources. This is going up fast, but it's still 2%, 3%. We can't make enough out of bio-based resources to fulfill our needs for all those important applications like electronics and bits for humans, possible. So what should we do? Household, everyday policy. Reduce, reuse, recycle. That's really true. These are the things that we should be doing. There are lots of bits of packaging, lots of bits of plastic we absolutely don't need, so don't do it. It's a no-brainer, but we just need to keep on pushing that. We can use less materials, so less robust things. Saves a lot of material. The reuse bit. We shouldn't be using anything as single use. Plastic cups, we should not be using as single use. But it takes a lot of organisation to have things which are refillable. We need to take charge of that, as well as the people who are supplying, so the supermarkets, whatever. It's not straightforward, there's a good movement there. So let's have a think about shopping bags. We are told to use bags multiple times, shopping bags, cotton shopping bags. So think about how many times you need to use that bag for it actually to make environmental sense. The metric that I'm going to use is again the global warming potential. So what I'm going to do is to take a Sainsbury's single-use carrier bag as my base point, but because we're all very environmentally conscious, we will be using that bag as a bin liner at the next stage in its life. So we're actually using it twice, for the original purpose and as a bin liner. And that's our baseline. And I need to compare it with these other things. So, Sainsbury's bag for life. Sticker, you need to use that 4 times to have the same environmental footprint. A more robust plastic bag that lasts a bit longer, 11 times. Paper, 3 times. Paper isn't that great on other environmental metrics either, actually, but you need to use it 3 times here. Cotton, 131 times. Unless it's organic cotton, in which case you need to do it 400 times. And if we use a different metric, because making cotton is very water intensive, 7,000 times. So, is cotton necessarily the best thing? Well, so the unpalatable conclusion here is that actually these bags on this carbon footprint metric are probably the best. There are other reasons for not using those, but that's on this metric.
Excuse me,
Yes.
can I interrupt? I have had this for years.
Good.
What material is that? It's not any of the ones in bleaching.
Oh, that could be something like
Nylon.
it is a sort of nylon.
That's
Yeah.
hundreds of uses.
So that's tremendous. Thank you very much. You make up for all the rest of us. Okay. So what can we do? We need to increase the amount of recycling. And one of the ways is that we need to make things easier for people. And if we have clearly labelled bins and we know what we're doing, maybe we'll do more of it. This is a project in Nepal. They live up at the top of a mountain. Stuff arrives in plastic. There's no way of disposing of plastic. There's a small Himalaya there made out of plastic. They have developed their own recycling facility here, and they use it for making floor tiles in the local school. And that has so many advantages. What should we do? There's a problem with things that look like plastic because they don't get into the right recycling stream. If we have things that are made out of plastic that don't look like plastic but have the same function, then they get recycled to make compost. So that can help a little bit. So thinking about what the materials look like. But the conclusions. So, plastics, they have a lot of good things about them. Waste plastic is our problem. The knee-jerk reactions, just get rid of packaging, get rid of plastic, isn't the right solution. Because we need to think about what the packaging does, and particularly about food wastage, preventing food wastage. Just replacing plastics with other single-use materials is also bad. Single-use, no way. So, reuse. Bio-based, biodegradable plastics, there are some question marks. So not all good, but it's the way that we're going, and it will eventually be a lot better. There's lots going on with materials to improve recyclability. We need not to use unnecessary materials, but don't stop using packaging. And no single-use anything. But more recycling. There's technical stuff, but there's the people aspects. If people aren't interested, if people think this is just rubbish, they don't take any notice of where they throw it. They throw in the wrong bin, and that just increases the amount of waste in the environment. So, cultural change. Recycling is important. That's the message that we need to get across. And I've been talking about the UK. Wales, the Welsh people have a different mindset from the English people. They're really, really good at all of this recycling stuff. They're the second best in the whole world at recycling. In England, we've got a long way to go. Thank you, Jane. Sorry, I've run out of time.